Hi, everyone, and welcome to a new edition of Newsmakers. I'm Jerry Roberts. It is Friday, January 17th, the last waning hours of the Biden administration before we're all doomed. And I'm pleased to welcome back our all-star panel of top local journalists, freelance investigative reporter Melinda Burns, Ryan P. Cruz, staff writer for the Santa Barbara Independent, and Josh Molina, man of many hats and host of the ever growing popular Santa Barbara Talks podcast. Thank you all for coming. Melinda, let's start with you. Thanks to your years of indefatigable reporting, there's finally been a major change in our cannabis ordinance. Um, the new Board of Supervisors voted this week to begin to impose some regulation on odor. What did they do?
So with Roy Lee from Carpinteria now on the board in place of Das Williams, they moved very quickly to set in motion and some amendments to the cannabis ordinance. The cannabis ordinance was approved in 2018, and it opened the gates to quite a bit of greenhouse conversion from flowers to cannabis in the Carpinteria Valley, right next to neighborhoods. And of course, the smell of pot has been a major conflict out there with the community. And a brand of scrubbers a couple of years ago from the Netherlands, these are filters, carbon filters that clean up the smell inside the greenhouses. These were found to be very effective in reducing the smell out in the neighborhoods. So a handful of growers put these in and actually help this firm in the Netherlands develop this growers. But the majority of growers are still not using that system. They're using a misting system. There's pipes around the rooftops of these greenhouses, and then when they vent for temperature control, they vent the operations and these big windows open, then the smell goes out into the outside air, and this mist was supposed to sort of neutralize the smell, and it has not been totally effective. So there's major hot spots around the Carpinteria city of Carpinteria, in the city of Carpinteria, where you can still smell pot. And what the supervisors have done now, major change, is they are going to they are proposing to require every single greenhouse operation to install these very expensive filters called scrubbers.
Yeah.
And that's a big change from the past. In the past, Das Williams, the previous supervisor for Carpinteria and the first district,
And author of the cannabis ordinance.
yes, was very reluctant to do an across the board mandate like that. And he was trying to convince he said, it's better to do it voluntarily, but that hasn't really produced the results that people want.
Josh, this was such a big deal that you even showed up at the supervisors to write about it. I mean,
I don't
uh,
trust any other reporters anymore. I'm just so paranoid. I got to show up.
it was, but I mean, it's very interesting to me that, as Melinda mentioned, Roy Lee taking Doss's seat is one thing, and then Laura Capps becoming the president, new president of the board. This is the first thing she took on, and she did it in a very aggressive way. It was kind of interesting.
There's a whole new sense of energy and fresh air at those Board of Supervisor meetings. And I don't say that as a dig at Doss Williams. It's just a fact. They're getting along and they're on the same page. And Laura has formed this alliance with Bob Nelson. And of course, Roy Lee is on board. And then Joan Hartman is on board. And even Steve is on board. So Laura's brought this sense of optimism, unity, collaboration on this issue. And everyone is sort of watching it thinking, why didn't this happen sooner? Why did
Yeah,
DOS fight
why did
this?
it take 7 years for this to
Because
happen?
it seems so obvious, like such an obvious thing to try to do to please the majority of the people in the Carpinteria Valley. So yeah, Laura's hit the ground running, and she's building a consensus.
Yeah, and Melinda, as Josh notes, even Steve Lavanino, who was the other Doobie brother who joined with Dawson writing this ill-fated ordinance, went along. Uh,
Yeah.
but
Steve said it was doable. It was the right time to do it. But there was a discussion about the North County outdoor cannabis. That's where it's grown in an open field or under hoop houses. And the city of Buellton in particular has complained, people have complained about the smell there because the prevailing wind is from the west blowing towards the east, and Buellton, they've got a lot of cannabis just west of Buellton in the vineyard country there. And another point of contention that Joan Hartman, supervisor from that area, was adamant that the board address in the future. And Steve Lavanino said, I don't think I'm on board for that. I don't think there's a way to solve that. And it would be trickier. What do? You can't put a machine, maybe under a hoop house, you could have a machine. Who knows? But there are certain brands of cannabis that smell less. Uh, anyway, the Supervisor Nelson and Supervisor Capps both said that they wanted the board to address that.
yeah,
In fact, Joan Hartman said, I'll die on this hill." So she's really
all right.
determined to get something done.
We'll look forward to that. Meanwhile, we're all continuing to watch the horror of the fires down in LA. Yeah, I think the death toll is now 25, and something like 12,000 homes and other structures destroyed. And Ryan, you had a piece. Basically, fire refugees from LA are coming up to Santa Barbara, and you talked to some of the hotel and motel owners. What was your sense of the scope of this?
Well, yeah, like you said, we've all been kind of watching this really closely, and it's no surprise that, with 100,000 people being evacuated from their homes, overnight, a lot of them just kind of came up north. And as soon as they hit clear air here in Santa Barbara, they started getting in the hotels. And anybody that was here over the weekend, if you went to the farmers market, you went downtown, you saw a lot more people out and about. And if you talk to them, you'd find a lot of people from the Palisades area, from Altadena, Pasadena. What was really nice to see is how much Santa Barbara jumped to help. I think a lot of California has been that way. As soon as we hear that, we're all too familiar with this. We know exactly what it's like to have, I have not been in a big fire, the Loma Alta fire, not too long ago. We lived right by there and we had to get evacuated for that. And that's scary. You don't know what you have to take. To see all of our businesses, offering free meals, whatever they can, and just surfing, Facebook and Nextdoor and seeing everybody saying, "Hey, I'm going down to LA this week. If you have anything, I drop it off at my house and I'll take it." It was really nice to see that. A welcome relief from all the stuff we hear nationwide of people saying, this infrastructure is bad, and yet there's a lot of things that could be done, but it's nice to see, the good side of helping people that are taken out of their homes right now.
And taking care of animals too.
Yeah, and that's, we're here in the Central Coast and in Southern California, we really care about the animals. So we have so many organizations, Care for Paws, humane societies that are, willing to help the birds, the wildlife, and the, our pets that I've seen some videos online that were pretty sad of people that had to leave their pets, and they went back to their burnt house and their pet's still there, and they're way emotional because they don't know if their pet was alive. So having these organizations making sure their pets are safe and they'll try to find their owners. We're still figuring out what homes are gone, and people are seeing the extent of damage. So we're going to be looking at this for a while.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be a fire, of course, or a disaster without scams and gouging. Josh, you had a piece that you worked with your colleague Daniel Green on, quoting the district attorney about concerns about rent gouging, or at least rents going up because of the influx of folks from the fire.
Yeah, I mean, there hasn't been any like proof of this happening yet, although there is a lot of worry and concern and fear, and I guess rightfully so. If you look at previous, history in these kinds of situations, I talked to Stanley Zankoff, co-founder of the Santa Barbara Tenants Union, and he's very concerned, and the people he associates with are very concerned that predatory landlords might try to take advantage of the situation. And of course, even before the fires, they had major concerns about the rental market and landlords doing things like rent evictions and doing everything they can to push tenants out and raise rent. So now they're even more concerned, while wanting to be helpful, obviously, to everybody who's coming in from the Los Angeles area, concerns that this could have an impact on the rental market, and landlords will raise them as much as they can, which is further going to stress the people who need to live in this community, who work in the community. And I know that houses for sale, right, have already gone up quite a bit. And if you look at, the various listings online, immediately there was a spike. And so we do know that's happening from a for sale, market.
Yeah, you talked to Renee Grubb, our old friend Renee Grubb, who's one of the top realtors in town. What did she say about that?
Yeah, so Daniel and I teamed up on that. So, he talked to her, and I think that there's a concern about that happening, that there's always going to be landlords who are, I mean, not landlords, property owners who are going to do that, but most of them are not doing that. But we really don't know. You have to see sort of how it shakes out. And there's just a concern of how is this going to play out with everybody coming in, and we don't have enough housing as it is for everybody who wants to live here. And so it's one of those sad things. Of course, Santa Barbara wants to be helpful, but people already are having difficulty living here. And of course, the cost to buy a home is outrageous. So we're going to see the market impacted all around.
Yeah, and
I just,
unfortunately, we see, when something like this happens, it's like sharks, surrounding the pool of blood. There's these scammers that come on and do fake GoFundMe's, and with this price raising, there's a lot of the legal jargon of it is, when did that price raise happen? It was in a state of emergency. Was a state of emergency declared in this county? So although we've seen these houses being offered for rent, at one price before the fires and one price after the fires, you talk to the DAs, and there's a little more to it of what constitutes price gouging, but it's something to definitely be on the lookout. And if you see something that looks like a over the top raise, you should report it.
All right, Melinda, what were you going to say?
it's just not necessarily safer here. I mean, people who lost their homes are looking for a home, and maybe there are homes for sale here, but it's not necessarily a safer place to be. We have, we're going to have some terrible fires.
Yeah, it's only January.
Had terrible fire. Remember when, 2017, we had the Thomas fire in Ventura, and we got all the ash.
Yeah. And the Thomas fire is really the one that started our sort of recent spate of super fires that have just driven the insurance market crazy. And then, Ryan, what I know, to Melinda's point, the city administrator, Kelly McAdoo, had some comments about local fire preparations. What was she on about?
So the city has been getting a lot of, questions and comments during public comment and just to their emails about, are we ready? Do we have the infrastructure set up? How's our water looking? And so she wanted to just lay out there, since 2017, since the Thomas fire, unfortunately, we have a lot of experience with having our emergency response in place, getting ready in high wind events and red flag warnings. We are very, very, we look forward to these things ahead of time to make sure we are prepared. And so she laid out there that we have a lot of water. We have enough water to last 3 years, but she did put a caveat on there. And that's the big thing that a lot of us here in California know. And that's if there's a fire big enough, there's all the water in the world cannot stop
And the
damage from
wind. I
happening.
mean, it's the wind. I mean, there's nothing.
The wind, you know,
80 miles an hour.
One of the things I thought got sort of lost in the shuffle of explaining why the water was a problem down there is that when a house burns, the pipes are destroyed and they just stream out water. And so a lot of those properties were just gushing water. That's, you know, and that's what reduced the pressure maybe more than anything.
All right, Melinda, I want to double back on the supervisors and talk a little bit more about Roy Lee and the change and what that represents. And I know you're working on a piece. I don't want to give away your scoops, but you're working on a piece for next week about Roy. Josh, you had a piece last week or this week about Roy as well. I mean, what's the sort of salient change that you see him making there in terms of county governance?
I think that cannabis is just number one, and that's what we've seen already happening. And I think that he is in favor of more transparency. One of the things that happened in the board meetings, about the two board meetings, the one board meeting this week about cannabis was that they asked for a lot more information from their staff. For example, I think in 7 years, they once, it was last fall, gave the breakdown between North County and South County taxes paid. And it's like 18% of the taxes are coming from the North County and 82% are coming from the city, or the Carpinteria Valley greenhouse operations. So you can see that who's creating the most revenue for the county is down here, not up there. And I think that kind of information is very important. They also asked for more information about these very expensive audits that the county has paid into to make sure that the self-reporting is being done accurately on revenues. There's only one audit has been completed in several years, and the board was very interested to know more about that. And so I think that it seems, as Josh said, they're more aggressive in trying to ask questions that will be helpful for the public to understand what the industry is doing.
Yeah, and Josh, you had a piece about Roy having something of a honeymoon right now, just because of all the negative feelings about DOS, if nothing else. But you suggest it might be short-lived.
Sorry, Wade. So I had a line in my story, is the political honeymoon over? And what I meant was Roy, 2 days after he was sworn in, substituted for Bob Nelson at a LAFCO meeting, and they were appointing at-large members. And Roy Lee went with his choices, which was Shane Stark and Roger Aceves as the alternate. A subcommittee of LAFCO had recommended Janelle Osborne and Roger Aceves. And it was a nice little anecdote to include in my story, because what it really said was Joan Hartman, she will not be happy until
He does not like Janelle Osborne. Oh.
She won't be happy until she moves back to Texas, because she does not even want her to serve on LAFCO. And of course, Janelle Osborne famously challenged her for 3rd District Supervisor, lost terribly, didn't raise any money, and turned out to be really not a threat. But then Joan Hartman went and got a candidate to run against her for Lompoc mayor. And guess what? Janelle lost, and the conservative candidate, Jim Mosby, won.
So did Roy realize he was getting in the middle of this
Well, Roy
Second
Roy
or
says
not?
no. The great thing about Roy is that he is honest, right? And if we're being honest, that is a dramatic difference than his predecessor. He says exactly what he means. Okay, so he said, hey, I'm going to LAFCO. It's my first meeting. He heard Joan talk. She made a convincing argument, and the thing was, a subcommittee had recommended and went over all of this. So Bob Nelson was a little peeved, more at Joan, less at Bob, but it showed right away. It illustrated that Roy is going to do what Roy thinks is best, regardless of what a subcommittee suggests or what other people tell him what to do, or even what Bob Nelson recommends, because Bob Nelson wanted Janelle Osborne. So it's just interesting to see that dynamic. Of course, he's new. I'm not even sure, how prepared can you be for a LAFCO meeting when you're substituting 2 days after being sworn in. I got to say, I was over there. I talked to Roy. He is so gracious. He is kind. He looks you in the eye. You feel like he actually thinks you're important, and he'll think you're important beyond the 10 minutes you're talking to him, and that's a difference from his predecessor. So I think that's part of the change. It's style,
Yeah.
but so far, he's getting a lot just by being a trustworthy person.
Hey, Ryan, let me ask you about a piece you did. Actually, I wrote a similar piece 15 years ago. Some things never change. That Santa Barbara County has the second highest poverty rate among the 58 counties in California. Um, did that surprise you? And there's some action that's kind of collecting around that.
That's one of those stats. It's shocking, but I wouldn't say I was surprised by it. If you spend some time in the community here, that there's this wealth disparity. That there's these people that own Hollywood production companies. There's millionaires that own, really important companies that live in Santa Barbara County. But at the same time, there's people living on the street struggling. And what this really showed is that, us being second, the only county that had higher was Yolo County, which has been in the news lately as one of their elementary schools has instead of a principal, they call it a warden, and they're trying to get it changed. So, that's the only county that's worse than us. We have to kind of address this, and it's happening in plain sight. And, it's nice to see all these nonprofits. We have so much philanthropic causes and so many people that have money. It's about connecting that and connecting those resources to the people on the ground and getting it to where it needs to be. Now, I don't know what the timeline on this is going to be and what's going to come out of this, but, there's a nationwide initiative called an Upward Mobility Initiative. And that, is giving people a chance to get out of poverty. And one of the people I spoke with, she said, if people say, pick yourself up by the bootstraps, but if you don't have boots and you don't have straps, you can't do that. And so it's giving people the tools and access to the things they need. That's healthcare, that's housing, removing these obstacles and making things easier when you're at the bottom and barely scraping by is extending those things. And this is one of those things we just talked about Roy Lee. In Carpinteria, he spoke out against safe parking. And that's, he was saying that, it's homeless people. But these are people that were just living in the community. They're living in their car. If they're parking in the community, they work here and they're trying to keep it up and trying to stay alive. And that's the next level to being homeless. And so it's really going to be interesting on how we look at homelessness in the next couple of years and poverty and housing. And this is all tied together. And how do we fix this and connect the dots to
immigration?
Immigration over the next 4 years is going to be a huge.
And I just wanted to real quickly, Jerry, because a lot of people don't understand the poverty problem in Santa Barbara. They think it's homeless people, just homeless people. They think it's just people living in their cars. But, when we come at number two, what we're talking about is multiple families living in apartments, in houses. And that's poverty, right? And so these people who come in, all these people are coming into Santa Barbara. It's like Santa Barbara's beautiful. It's always so problematic for me because people don't actually open their eyes and look around and drive to the west side, the east side, parts of Goleta, all over, and see that what we have are working class people who have low paying jobs, families doubling up, living in apartments, and that they can't afford to live here. And then that ties into the rental protections issue. I have a daughter, she's in elementary school. You don't see poverty any more than when you see, children, and you see that and you see these families. And so poverty has to be looked at. And I'm speaking, I guess, to like conservatives who are want to like just say it's a homeless issue. No, it's the people who are cleaning your yard, it's the janitors, it's the housekeepers, it's the people making your food, it's the people watching your children.
Melinda,
It's
you've done
everyone.
a lot of reporting with farm workers in North County. Obviously, it's a huge issue there as well.
Yep. I think that we know that 1 out of 3 residents of this county are on Medicaid, Medi-Cal. I bet a lot of those undocumented farm workers are not on any kind of health insurance. Maybe their kids have gotten some. But yeah, there's pockets of real poverty. Lompoc is one of them.
Yeah,
But
and that's major misconception about farm workers too, and undocumented workers is that they are leeching. They don't receive any social benefits, and they pay taxes, and
Right.
their taxes get taken out of their paychecks, and they don't get any of this Social Security. They don't get any of these benefits. So, that's something that we see a lot in social media, and that it's something that we just need to hammer down what really is happening here.
Yeah. All right. Well, finally, Josh, thanks to Sherry Ray and newsmakers, the Italian stone pines on Anapamu Street were saved this week. That kind of surprised me that it was a unanimous vote at the council.
Jerry, you scoop me. It's Sunday morning. I get your newsletter. It's like I was planning my Monday story on that, and there's Sherry Ray telling the whole story. But yeah, Sherry's amazing. It's great that you guys got that story out first. And the council voted 6-0. Kristen Stedda wasn't there, but it would have been 7. She was all for this. And, basically the Parks Department, because these Italian stone pines, they're big and their roots grow really big and they're uprooting the sidewalks. And when we had a drought before recent rains, of course, it was wearing on them. And then the rains came and then some of them fell over. And so they needed to be removed. And they're saying long term, these aren't a good trees for Anapamu Street, East Anapamu. So we need to replace them. So they went through this process and decided we're going to replace them when they die with Coast live oaks. Well, Sherry Ray, who's written many books, she's a historian, Pearl Chase. She and some others filed an appeal and said, this
Lawson.
Yeah, this is an iconic view, and we need to keep these Italian stone pines. And the city council, this rarely happens, went against the staff, the Parks and Rec Commission, the Street Tree Advisory Committee, and they basically said, let's make it work. Let's figure out a way.
They had all walked over the Historic Landmarks Commission, of course, as well as landmarks designation by the city council.
But it was one of those things of, all trees are going to be problematic. These trees are historic, and when they die, let's replace them with new ones and figure out a way to make it work. And so, yeah, it was cool. I mean, if you're a council member, I guess, why wouldn't you side with all of those preservationists? Those are votes, right? Like, who you're going to side with city staff? Now, there are some homeowners who live in Anapamu who might feel differently, but they did not show up at the meeting. So that was a big win for newsmakers, for Sherry, for
the
people who
Pearl
love
Chase
trees.
faction of the local community.
Each of those trees has a huge water box next to it. I guess they fill it up and it leaches out slowly, but you big plastic, huge water box.
But it's so, I mean, it is so iconic. It's just
it is.
There.
You drive down that street, you go to Santa Barbara Bowl, you go watch a game down at Santa Barbara High School, and you see that street. It's really iconic to that area. And I just want people to remember that this city council listen to the people, that they're willing to do that and hold them accountable when there's another time in the next couple of years, when a lot of people show up and, they'd say that our hands are tied and we can't side with the people. They have done this. They can side with the people. Maybe
All
when
right,
it's
there you have it. The people united and newsmakers will never be defeated. All right. We'll celebrate our small victory today as we look forward to next week. All right. Thank you very much, Melinda Burns, Ryan P. Cruz, Josh Molina. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time on Newsmakers.
Thanks, Jerry.
Thank you.